All right, here we are. We are here to talk about, Brain Lady Julie here, to talk about the topic for the month is managing depression and anxiety, kind of a neuroscience approach. Let me mute my YouTube side. We are doing this live on YouTube. So if you are watching this on YouTube, I am going to try to tandem and check out keep an eye on any comments that may pop up. But I may get kind of in the zone of what I'm talking about. And as I get started, I want to make sure that because this is a topic that carries a very serious tone to it, right? Depression and anxiety. I want to make sure that anybody watching, anybody listening, if you are suffering from this, please reach out for help. Please contact a therapist, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a good friend, a life coach, whatever it is. All right. Know that there are a lot of systems out there, a lot of things to help that I think you would benefit from. So I want to encourage you to do that. And second, I want everybody to know this is really for informational purposes only. Everyone's brain is so unique. Everyone's brain is so unique, and everyone's situations and circumstances and body is so unique that I want to make sure that you understand this is for informational purposes, right? Take this information, build on it, take it to your therapist, your doctor, whatever, but it is for informational purposes only. Okay, with that, this is the time of year where a lot of times people tend to experience more anxiety, more depression due to circumstances, right? So if that's the case, that's what I'm going to try to share some tips on how to navigate through that in this video today. And that's what I want to help people for. It's important to understand kind of the neuroscience. I think it is. You know me as a brain lady, I'm just fascinated with neuroscientists and neuroscientists and the neural research that's being done with all of these very amazing scanning machines and technology that's helping us to really understand the brain so much better. And I find it particularly helpful in situations with stress and anxiety that we know what's going on in the brain. So I'm going to share a little bit of that. I also am going to help you to think about how can I identify triggers that may make my symptoms worse? And then what are some coping mechanisms that I can put into place or that you can put into place to help you through these times? What are some of those effective coping strategies? What do they look like? Again, informational purposes. Your situation is unique to you. I understand that. So some may work well. Some you may have to tweak to fit you and your circumstances personally. So with that, let's get started. Why does the fall winter time of year affect people differently? Well, there's several contributing factors that we're going to talk about, but I want you to understand that you need to first really take note in your situation and recognize the difference between short term, seasonal, right, or episodic um, type of depression or anxieties, and long term or chronic. Because you're going to, even though a lot of the coping mechanisms and a lot of the treatment is very similar in both cases, understanding the cause is critical for really helping that mind brain connection and understanding positive steps to move forward, right? It could be that it's seasonal because of the shorter days, less sunlight. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It could be that it's episodic because of things that happen, right? If you are, for example, a person who has high anxiety in crowded spaces, and this time of year brings more people out, and the grocery store is more crowded, and the mall's more crowded, and the parks are more crowded, right? That can cause you additional anxiety. You can also perhaps experience loneliness during this time of year, maybe a little bit of FOMO that can lead to depression, right? When you hear or you watch things on social media, you know me and social media, right? That could possibly be causing additional anxiety or depression or stresses, then that can definitely have an effect on you. But the first thing that I really want people to understand is that it isn't anything to be ashamed of. It isn't anything to stress yourself out over and compound the symptoms. What happens a lot of time with individuals who suffer from high anxiety or depression, they think there's something wrong with them. And this can be just like added to or made even bigger by people in your life, friends, family, that perhaps are trying to help you out a little bit and may say things like, well, just snap out of it. Just come with us. You'll feel better. Right? It could be well meaning. The challenge is when that happens and you don't feel better, then you think something's wrong with me. Right? Then you add to that by the negative feelings towards yourself and the negative self-talk. On some of my other videos, some of my shorts here on the YouTube channel, or in things that we've covered in the past in our Women Excelling Everywhere Success Collective, we've talked about the power of words and how words literally change your chemistry. So understanding that the importance of monitoring your self-talk, if you are in this kind of downward spiral of what's wrong with me, that's just going to make it even worse, right? That's going to make it even worse. What I want you to understand is it is something that is different in your brain. The way your brain's firing, the way your brain's functioning is different when you are in a depressed state, especially if you have chronic depression. So I'm going to show you, and this is, like I said, this is something that I am always so fascinated with, is the neuroscience piece. So I'm going to pop up here on the screen. Hopefully it'll show the difference between what a normal brain looks like and what a depressed brain looks like. Can you see the difference? Right, this is just one rendering of, I believe this is a SPECT scan. Through my studies with the Amen clinics and as a brain health professional, these are some of the slides that I learned from or that I gained insight from. And you can tell the total difference between a brain that is functioning, the thought processes are functioning normally, and a brain that is depressed, right? It's pretty significant there, the difference, right? One is firing fairly normal in a lot of different areas, and the other one is the areas that are firing are your sub areas, the subcortical areas, which can be very hazardous to your frontal cortex not being able to function to even think about, how do I get myself out of this state? So it's important to understand this is not something that is just snap out of it, right? It's something that is different in your brain. So you want to pay attention to that. You want to understand the biology of what is going on. The Journal of Neuroscience, back in, I believe it was 2021, they published a study, and they had studied 24 women who had a history of depression. On average, the hippocampus in the brain, so this is in the subcortical regions, right? The hippocampus of the brain was 9 to 13% smaller in depressed women than those who were not depressed. And the more bouts of depression that women had, the smaller the hippocampus, right? Stress, we know that stress plays a role in depression, not just because the more stressed out you are, the more negative you are in your mindset, and therefore that whole spiral that I talked about earlier, right? The negative self-talk. But we know that connection between the hyperactivity of the amygdala and the activating of that HPA, the hippocampus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands, right? That HPA axis, how that damages and suppresses the production of new nerve cells in the hippocampus, and flushes the body with cortisol and other neurochemicals. So it really, literally, functionally in your brain, there is something that is off. And I want you to really understand that clearly, because when you understand that, it takes kind of the pressure off of you, right? You're not being as critical of yourself in thinking, there's something wrong with me. Why does this happen? Right? It takes kind of a little bit of that sting off. Okay, so that's the biology, right? That's kind of what's going on literally in your brain. Your neurochemistry is off oftentimes. Your feel-good, happy neurochemicals are reduced, or your neural receptors are not there. There's something, or are not as active as they should be. So there's something chemically off in the brain. So take that, understand what is the base of it, so that you take that pressure off of yourself. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to cover is what do you do about it? Like, okay, Julie, that's great. I know that it's, it is this thing that you just explained. Great. It was a pretty picture you shared, but what do I do about it? Okay, so let's get into what do you do about it. The first thing, and I'm gonna have a download, that I'm gonna have my just a PDF download that will recap a lot of what I'm talking about here in this video. Then I'm gonna have my graphic designer make this weekend. So we'll put that in the comments once it is made, because it'll kind of help to recap what we're talking about here. But if, again, first step, is it episodic? Is it seasonal, or is it chronic? Right? Either way, you can definitely seek help, and I encourage you to seek help. All of the things that I'm going to be suggesting to you here is just an add value, right? Just an add value. So if it is episodic, I want you to learn to recognize the triggers, right? So in those moments when you're just feeling that down and depression, I want you to do some mindful meditation. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But when you are in those moments of depression, you need to kind of re-engage the prefrontal cortex, which is the portion of the brain that is responsible for higher thinking. And that depletes. You saw it in the picture I shared, right? The activity there depletes. And the challenge is when that activity depletes, well, then that thought process gets interrupted. So you aren't able to logically work through what is the solution, or what's triggering this, what's causing this. So in those moments, you take that really deep activating breath for the prefrontal cortex, which is a 4 count in through your nose. You hold it for 2, and then you exhale for 5 through your nose, for 4 or 5 through your nose. Really important that you keep your mouth shut during this. This isn't to reduce the stress. This is to engage the prefrontal cortex. And that's what you want to do in this moment, because you want to be able to understand what are the triggers. If this is episodic, if this happens every fall, what's triggering me, right? Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it perhaps topics of conversation that come up often at the workplace, or in the in the family gatherings, or in the parties that you go to? Is it the music that plays that triggers you, right? And you recognize those trigger points, recognize those things that cause, you're just, after you're in this situation, after you hear this song, after you are doing the going to that party or that gathering, you're just like, you're down and depressed. You're just like, oh, right? Recognize the triggers, because once you recognize those triggers, well, now you can have a plan of action in place, right? So you can kind of take the preemptive strike, if you will, to put a plan of action into, okay, when I notice that every time this topic of conversation comes up at work, or it comes up at the family gatherings, it always makes me feel just yucky. So what am I going to do? Am I going to remove myself? Remember, there's nothing wrong with taking yourself out of a situation or out of a conversation that is potentially hazardous for you emotionally or mentally. It's totally and completely all right. Am I going to remove myself? Am I going to try to change the topic of conversation? Right? Sometimes you have those members of the family that are just the wah wah, right? They're always in the down. They're always talking about negative things, or they're talking negatively about other people, and that really brings you down. Well, perhaps you can have a plan of action of how you can twist it to the positive. And if that doesn't work, then you remove yourself, right? But really kind of do some of this mindful meditation and just think, what can I do in these situations when they begin to present themselves that can help me to not go down that spiral into and then become depressed. If it is as a result of anxiety from being in crowded spaces, then choose the times, have that plan of action ready in the beginning of the year, right? If you're doing special shopping for special people, do it all year long, right? Don't do it in that stress-induced anxiety of crunch time towards those specific dates in the winter, in the fall and winter, right? Have a plan of action in place and remind yourself of that plan of action, right? Have it visible. Know that when September hits or October hits or whatever time of year that you start feeling that, you print out that plan of action and you put it right on the wall. You put it on the refrigerator. You put it on the mirror, right? But be ready, right? Be ready, because that's going to help your brain. It's going to help your brain to respond or to act in the know how to act in the right way, right? Is it seasonal, right? If it's not episodic, maybe it's seasonal. There are a lot of people who deal with seasonal affectiveness disorder, or SAD is what they call it, SAD disorder, because they get sad, a little down, get the blues, get depressed during this time of year due to the fact that there's not as much sun, especially if you live in an area of the globe where your days become extremely short, or perhaps you um, your your the weather is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that word. A word escaped me. The weather. I think I was thinking about weather because my feet are cold. The weather that is taking place, more rain, more fog, right? If those are the situations, then again, have a plan of action, right? Know what you're going to do about it. If you look up SAD lamps or seasonal affective or seasonal depression lamps, you can purchase lamps for your home, that for your office, for your living space, that actually provide you with that a similar exposure to the brain as sun. It's not going to work as good as sun, but it is going to be helpful. I've heard a lot of good things about them. Um, if it is, you can plan to actually spend more time in the sun when the sun's available. So instead of going for a walk in the wee hour, you may do your walk or your jog, say at 6 a.m. in the morning. And during the summer, that's absolutely fine because the sun is out. But at 6 a.m. in the winter, it's darker. We might want to bump that into the afternoon when the sun is at its strength, right? When the sun exposure is going to be at its best. Now, by the way, if we always want to be careful about our skin health, right? When it comes to sun exposure, but oftentimes just 20 or 30 minutes of good sun exposure can combat that seasonal affective disorder well. You can also plan what I call sun weekend trips during the winter, maybe a couple times a month. Maybe it's just a day trip where you can get to a very sunny spot. It's very interesting. We live where we live in the Sierra Nevada foothills. We can have very sunny winters, even though they're cold, and even though we get a storm that may come through and dump snow. When it's over, the sun comes out and it's absolutely beautiful. We don't oftentimes go through weeks and weeks on end of darkness or cloudiness, right? Whereas if you just go an hour down the hill into the valley during the winter months, during January, February, they're prone to a lot of fog, and their sun exposure may only be an hour or two a day. So in cases like that, the valley people can just simply take a day, an afternoon, and drive up to where the sun is more intense. Or you can hop on a short flight if you live close enough to the coastline, the southern coast, where you're going to get more sun, right? On the beach, or sea therapy is wonderful as well because of the ions in the air and the rhythm of the waves. I've talked about that before on different videos, but those are also ways that you can increase your sun exposure, right? So kind of have that, again, it's kind of like that plan of action. Yeah, what am I going to do? I know I get down and depressed during this time of year. So what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with that? Right. So those are some active things that you can do and be ready for, and help to deal with your with that depression or anxiety if it comes connected to seasonal affectiveness disorder. If it is loneliness or isolation, this is something that happens for a lot of individuals, right? Again, they may be experiencing FOMO as they see pictures of family together. Well, maybe you don't have that much family that's still alive, Or maybe you're more of an introvert and you don't have a connection to as many people. And during this time of year, those people may increase their connection with their family. And so that decreases their connection with you, right? It could be that maybe you've lost someone and there is that feeling of loss that becomes overwhelming during the holidays. That happens a lot for people. The first thing that I would say in a situation like this is allow yourself to feel. If it is due to the loss of someone, resist the urge to say, oh, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 10 years, it's been 20 years. Oh my goodness, it was 30 years ago. Why do I still feel this way? Remove the negatives and allow yourself to feel. Uh, when you suppress those feelings, it's kind of like putting the lid back on the boiling pot, right? Eventually it's going to boil over and it's going to seep out and you're going to have a mess on the stove. That's what happens emotionally for you, right? You don't want to do that. You want to allow yourself to move through those feelings, acknowledge where they're coming from and why they are there. The key is not to sit and simmer in that for too long. Take the lid off the pot, have a good cry, process through those feelings, recognize what's going on, and then take a proactive approach by doing different things that can help with that situation. So, for example, if it is that loneliness or the loss or the isolation, then do some volunteer time. There are tons of opportunities this time of year to volunteer any time of year. If this is something that happens for you 12 months out of the year, then volunteer time. Volunteer with local volunteer groups. It can be anything. It can be at your local care homes. We often visit older ones who are in convalescent homes. And at times that can be overwhelming and depressive in its own way. However, if you focus on the happiness that you're bringing that person that's getting visited, I mean, think of it from their point of view. Talk about isolation, right? So volunteer some time there. Or just simply go every week, you may not have anybody in there that you know, but that doesn't mean you can't get to know somebody in there, right? So get out and be in those places where you're bringing happiness and you're bringing joy to them, right? Another thing that I tell people is get a dog or a cat, depending on what you like. Get a pet. There's a lot of very statistically proven information out there on how well our brains do and respond to animals, more specifically dogs. Like dogs have just a connection to humans. It has to do, scientists believe, with their mirror neurons. So we have these mirror neurons in our brain, right? And that is what causes you to yawn if I yawn, or you to smile if I smile. It also causes you to cry if I cry, right? It's empathy. These mirror neurons allow us to be empathetic to other people and feel what other people are feeling. Dogs have, in terms of the animal species out there, dogs have a very high number of these mirror neurons. And so that is one of the reasons why they are very good at connecting with you, at reading your stress, at understanding your emotions. So dogs make for very good depressive therapy animals, right? And they can combat that loneliness. And you can even add that if you have a dog that is specifically trained for this, you can then take that dog into convalescent homes and use them as therapy dogs for those individuals. Like, you can really go places with this, and that can really help to alleviate some of that depression that you're feeling and your anxiety. So think about doing some volunteer time, joining some kind of a club, right? There's some wonderful neuroscience to back up the fact that the brains of individuals who are part of a tight community, or who have hang out with like-minded individuals, their brains do better. We are herd animals. I tell people this all the time. We may be higher animals than the animal kingdom, but at the end of the day, we're still herd animals. We need people. People need people. So join some type of a club. It could be a book club if you like reading. Reading, by the way, is very healthy for the brain. So it could be a book club if you like reading. It can be it could be some kind of cross-stitching club. I don't know why that popped into my head, but it could be any type of club where people get together on a weekly basis and just hang out, right? Just hang out. It can even be an international club that's handled here on virtually on Zoom, right? Spread out. It could be a travel club, right? All kinds of different things that you can join. Join a club, be with like-minded people, especially if it's a club that meets at least weekly, if not bi-weekly. You can take classes, right? Pick up a hobby, take painting classes, pottery classes, things where, again, you're going every week and that's going to give you that extra brain stimulation, and it's going to help to combat that depression and anxiety if it has to do with that loneliness piece, right? Or that feeling of isolation. This is also very helpful. It can also mean take a class, jump in and take a course. I'm a lifelong learner. I love taking college courses, the extra certifications, as you know, right? So do something that's going to get your brain engaged in a different way. All right. And then the last piece is going to be monitor your self-care very closely. Make it a priority during these times when you are going to feel more down. And again, have the plan of action in place. Now, all of these things obviously can help 24 hours, or I should say 365 days a year. I'm just saying up it a notch, or if these feelings of depression and anxiety tend to hit you heavier during the fall, winter, then these are things that you want to really have a plan of action. What am I going to do this September, this October, this November, when I know this feeling is going to hit me? Have a plan of action to make self-care a priority, right? Pay attention first. The first piece is pay attention to your gut. We tend to, from that October holiday all the way through January, we tend to kind of mess up our digestion really bad because of the way we eat and the things we eat, and they're kind of all over the place, right? So we want to pay extra attention to the gut. 90% of the serotonin is produced in your gut. So if your gut biome is off, then your serotonin production is going to be off. It's also can lead to leaky gut syndrome, which can lead to all kinds of brain issues because of that gut-brain connection, right? Remember, the gut is just a second brain. It has millions of neurons in it that communicate directly up the vagus nerve to the head brain. So keep that in mind. So be selective about the foods that you eat. And even if you take advantage and indulge in what you indulge in, that's fine. Just make sure that you're compensating for that by making sure that you're taking good supplementation, perhaps a really high quality probiotic, or adding in those fermented foods, right? Those could be your things like kimchi. Did I say that right? Kimchi? Pickles, dill pickles, specifically dill pickles over sweet pickles. Yes, sweet pickles are also fermented. However, they have very high sugar content, which is not good for the brain. So go for your dill pickles, right? Go for even just drink a shot of dill pickle juice every day. I know that sounds crazy. It's excellent for the gut. So those are, see if there's ways that you can supplement that way in your diet. Taking a good probiotic, feeding that gut is going to help you produce better serotonin. You might want to supplement with some vitamin A and D, right? They're both very good for the brain. D is that sunlight vitamin. And deficiency in A has been linked to depression. So you want to get the A in there. So has deficiency in D. So A is very good for brain function. D is very good. It is the natural, it is what we call the sunlight vitamin, right? It is, your body can produce it on its own. It doesn't have to supplement it if you get enough sunlight and if your body has its production right. My husband, it's very interesting. He was low in D. And when I saw he was low in D, I'm like, what? Are you serious? How could it be low in D? He builds swimming pools. He's out in the sun all the time. But sometimes your body doesn't manufacture the best. So you might want to supplement with those. So look at adding some supplements in there, right? Taking that good probiotic or adding A and D into your supplementation or into your daily routine, right? So that's a big piece of self-care that you need to take care of. Getting exercise is incredibly important as well. right? You've heard me talk about this in the past. Exercise creates endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. We know this. We know this. Off now, if you're down and you're depressed, sometimes it's hard to even roll out of bed. So what I suggest to people is if you are in that situation, if that's where your level is that you don't even want to roll out of bed, then I'm going to encourage you roll out of bed and just walk outside and do some deep breathing. Right? It can be that can be the start. That can be just the first step in making sure that um, you're doing some exercise. You're getting out in nature. Many studies have been done where people say their self evaluation of their depression improves when they are in green spaces, right? If the weather's bad and you can't get out, then bring the green spaces in. Lots of benefits to having plants. I've done other videos on it, watch the other videos, but lots of benefits. If you can't get out in green spaces, literally surround yourself in a green space. Create a green space in your home. Reach out and actually touch the leaves, right? Feel the leaves. Wash your plants, right? Do things, interact with them. I know that sounds a little bit off, but I promise you, studies have shown to the benefits of this. Dancing, getting up and dancing to music. Oftentimes when we feel down, we kind of want to listen to the melancholy music, and that can actually compound the situation. Switch it up. Play the music that is going to change your brain rhythm into a more upbeat brain with rhythm, right? And actually physically moving in the dance is going to give you the effect of exercise if you don't feel up to actually doing exercise or going to the gym, right? So those are some little tricks and ideas that you can do. Make sure that you're doing your daily stretches too. So it might be that you roll out of bed and you just stay right there on the floor and you just start stretching, right? You just start stretching, getting that circulation going. It makes you feel better physically, which often has that mind benefit as well. Okay. Keeping your friends close, making sure that even though you want to isolate, you force yourself to even just text your friends, right? That this is goes back to that being part of a group, right? Joining a group, joining a book club, something like that. The first thing that you tend to want to do when you get depressed is you isolate, and that's the worst thing that you can do to your brain. So keep those friends close, and that's going to help in that self-care routine. So it might be that you just go, you know what? I'm going to make a plan with my bestie, and we're going to go out and we're going to have coffee at the coffee shop or at the bookshop or wherever once a week. And we're going to do our best to stick to that. Right? That's a really good self-care routine as well. And then I'm going to finish up. I know this has been a long video, but I'm going to finish up with mindful meditation. This is the foundation, the core at the core of the work that I do, no matter what I'm coaching on, even if I'm coaching on entrepreneurs, how to get more things done, or I'm coaching on relationships, or I'm coaching, it doesn't matter. Mindful meditation is so important. It is important it's important, right? So make sure that you're doing that every day. When you're doing that, and if you need more information on that, we have videos that have been done on how to do mindful meditation and the benefits of it. For this particular topic, I want you to really focus on the words you're using. So every morning when you're doing this, you're going to bookend your day with mindfulness work. Every morning, you're going to do those breaths that I talked about earlier. Several of those, you're going to come completely in tune with the now, be 100% present. And then you're going to really focus on all of the positives. You're going to start off your day with that, and you're going to bookend it at the end. You're going to talk about the things that you're going to think about and meditate on the things that you're grateful for. You may write it in a journal. You may brain dump it on a piece of paper. Like, I'm not a big right to left, full sentence journal person. I think most people aren't. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of people struggle with journaling is because they feel like they have to do it this particular way. So I tell people just brain dump, right? Just take a piece of paper and just draw it out. Just brain dump it. Just write words. What are the things you're grateful for? The sun. If you saw the sun this morning, family, health, food, right? Whatever it is, the things that you're grateful for. When you tell your brain, one of the things I'm always telling everybody, your brain listens to everything you are thinking in your mind. So you've got to be careful what you're thinking about. You've got to be careful what message you're telling your brain. Your brain's going to follow suit. And that's what it's going to focus on, especially during your dream state, during nighttime, right? So when you bookend your day with thinking about the positives, writing down those positive words, writing down the things you're grateful for, writing down your 10 top favorite things that happened, your 2 top favorite things that happened during the day, your dog, your cat, your spouse, your the beauty of nature, your plants, whatever it is, write them down. And that what that's doing is it's telling the brain, I want you to focus on these things. And that's just going to make it, it's just going to kind of make it blow up, if you will, in your mind and in that thought process. Right. So I've talked long enough. This has been a really, really long live video. Let me do I'm going to do a really quick check here and see if there's some comments that might have come in. I don't want to ignore anybody. Um, if you have questions about what I talked about today, then by all means reach out, and you know how to get in touch with me. Brain Lady Julie, wherever, message me. And for those with the here in the Women's Success Collective, this is our focus for the month. We're going to have activities throughout the month that I'm going to want you to do to really help you engage this and really get better at managing the